Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're plunging headfirst into something incredibly personal, something that shapes lives, brings immense joy, and, well, causes significant heartache, too. The complex world of romantic relationships.
hmm
Forget the fairy tales for a moment. We're here to explore the messy, fascinating reality of what actually brings people together, what helps them stay connected for the long haul, and frankly, why finding and keeping love feels like such a profound struggle for so many of us.
It really does, doesn't it?
We've got a truly insightful stack of sources provided by you, our listener, for this deep dive. We're going through articles, research discussions, personal anecdotes that really dig into the foundational pieces.
Yeah, things like compatibility factors.
You're right, and the crucial importance of doing your own self-work before and even, during dating.
And those often hidden psychological patterns like attachment styles and the fear of commitment that can really trip us up.
Exactly. Plus,
Yeah.
a range of very human, sometimes quite raw perspectives on both the search for love and the complex reality of navigating long-term partnerships, including experiences shared by people who've been married multiple times.
That's exactly right. And the material you've shared, it isn't offering some simple step-by-step guide or like a magic formula.
No quick fixes here.
Not at all.
Yeah.
It's challenging us to look beyond the surface-level advice and understand the deeper forces at play, both internal and external. The mission for this deep dive is really to extract the most impactful nuggets of knowledge, the key insights from all this rich material.
To give you, our listener, a more informed, maybe more nuanced picture of the dynamics influencing our search for genuine connection.
Precisely.
It's about gaining awareness, equipping yourself with understanding so you can navigate the dating world, and future or current partnerships with hopefully more clarity, more intention, and maybe less unnecessary pain.
Yeah, definitely less pain if possible.
So let's unpack this. Right at the beginning of the journey, into a potential relationship, there are these two concepts that often get confused, but the sources make a really critical distinction: chemistry versus compatibility.
They really hammer this point home. Chemistry, as described in the articles, it's consistently presented as the initial catalyst.
The spark.
It's that spark, yeah. That instant mutual attraction could be physical, intellectual, emotional, that feeling that just draws you in.
Mm-hmm.
It's palpable, exciting, and often happens almost, well, instantaneously.
The butterflies in your stomach, the intense conversations that feel like they could go all night, that feeling of just wanting to be around them all the time. It's powerful stuff.
It absolutely is. And it's important, don't get me wrong. But the sources are very clear.
Mm.
While chemistry might light the fire, compatibility is the wood that keeps it burning.
Ah, okay.
It's the deeper foundation, the essential glue that holds things together, not just for a few weeks or months, but, over years and decades.
So what does that look like then, compatibility?
Well, according to this material, it encompasses significant and fundamental elements of your life, your lifestyle, your worldviews, your core beliefs, your values, your fundamental attitudes, and ultimately your consistent behavior, the big stuff.
Okay, so chemistry is like the explosive energy that gets you to knock on the door, but compatibility is whether you can actually comfortably and happily share that house together for the rest of your lives.
That's a really good way to put it. And the key takeaway from the sources is that for any truly long-term, flourishing, sustainable relationship, you absolutely need both.
Both, not one or the other.
You can't rely solely on one or the other.
Because if you have just the spark, that intense chemistry, but like nothing deeper to back it up.
That's where the sources warn us about the significant danger. They use a very vivid and memorable analogy. Chemistry without compatibility can be a ticking time bomb.
A ticking time bomb. Wow.
Think about it. These relationships, fueled purely by that intense initial passion and attraction, they can start incredibly fast.
Yeah.
They feel exhilarating, maybe even like fate, right?
Yeah, totally.
But without that underlying alignment on core lifestyle choices, fundamental beliefs, values, they rapidly become difficult. They turn strenuous, conflict-ridden, and often descend into unhealthy dynamics because you're constantly butting heads on the really important things about how you live and what you prioritize.
And by the time you hit that wall of fundamental mismatch, you're already emotionally invested. Your lives might be intertwined. Maybe you've moved in together or introduced families.
Exactly.
As the source says, you can find yourself too far in before you realize the relationship isn't actually built on solid ground.
Precisely. And the crucial advice offered is to allow your head to catch up to your heart.
Okay. Head catch up to heart.
Don't let that powerful, exciting feeling of chemistry completely blind you or override your more rational assessment of whether your lives and core values actually fit together. Use both your head and your heart to guide your decisions, especially in those early stages when the chemistry is strongest and potentially most misleading.
That requires conscious effort, though.
It really does. You have to step back and look objectively, even when it feels amazing.
All right, so chemistry without compatibility is the ticking time bomb. What about the reverse? Compatibility without chemistry.
The sources acknowledge this scenario as well. If you find someone who is incredibly compatible on paper, your values align perfectly, you want the same things out of life, your daily habits mesh well, but there's simply no chemistry, no spark, no attraction.
Then what?
You're likely to be left feeling like something is missing. The relationship might be stable and comfortable, maybe even easy, but you'll find yourself craving that deeper emotional or physical connection.
Ah, so it's not quite right either.
Exactly. So while alignment on those deeper levels is absolutely key for longevity, the sources confirm some level of attraction. That initial spark is also necessary for it to feel like a fulfilling romantic connection. It's the blend that's required for long-term success.
Okay, so compatibility is the non-negotiable foundation. But diving deeper, what does that foundation actually look like? The sources don't just leave us guessing, they get pretty specific about the building blocks that make up compatibility.
They do, and they break it down quite effectively. The first major area they talk about is your lifestyle.
Lifestyle.
And this isn't just a casual term. It's defined as encompassing how you spend your daily life. It includes your habits, your hobbies, your diet and exercise routines, your work-life balance, and your social activities. Basically, the practical rhythms of your existence.
Let's unpack some of those.
Yeah.
Habits and hobbies seem straightforward, like if one person loves hitting the gym at 5 a.m. and the other sleeps in until noon and hates exercise,
Right.
that could create friction.
Right.
Or if one person spends weekends hiking and the other prefers binge-watching TV shows.
Exactly. And the sources highlight how these daily routines and leisure pursuits, or the lack thereof, can impact your ability to connect and spend meaningful time together. But the diet and exercise example given is particularly vivid and illustrates a deeper point.
Right, the contrast between the environmentalist, vegetarian, and the Hot Pocket eater.
Yeah. It's presented almost humorously when it makes a serious point. The source contrasts someone who is deeply committed to an environmentalist, ethical lifestyle, buying organic, local, perhaps non-GMO, and fair trade, with someone who, say, works for a company like Monsanto and prefers processed convenience foods like beef Hot Pockets.
Okay, yeah, that's quite a contrast.
It is. And this isn't just about food preferences. It speaks to fundamentally different values around health, the environment, ethics, even corporate responsibility.
And those kinds of deep-seated differences manifest daily: what you buy at the grocery store, where you eat out, how you view food production. That's a lot of potential friction points.
It really is. And the sources explicitly note a finding that individuals who prioritize health and fitness often show higher compatibility with each other. It's not a rigid rule, obviously, but it suggests that alignment in something as fundamental as how you care for your physical well-being and the values underpinning those choices can lead to a smoother daily life together.
Work-life balance is another huge one that can cause massive strain if you're not aligned.
Oh, absolutely. It's presented as a significant area of potential conflict. The sources detail the friction that inevitably arises when one partner has made their career their absolute top priority, dedicating almost all their energy, time, and identity to it.
While the other partner fundamentally prioritizes family, maybe the relationship itself, or other personal pursuits above professional advancement.
Exactly. Being on the same page, or at least having a shared understanding and respect for how you each allocate your most valuable resources, time and energy, is deemed crucial for preventing resentment and ensuring you feel like you're actually building a life together, not just living parallel lives.
That makes sense. And social life needs. The anecdote about one person needing solitude and the other wanting constant gatherings is very relatable.
It is, isn't it? The source describes a couple where one person deeply values quiet nights and alone time together, feeling recharged by solitude, while the other feels energized by constant social interaction and wants to be surrounded by friends and family regularly.
So what happened there? Was it a deal breaker?
Well, the key insight was that while this wasn't an insurmountable deal breaker for them, it required ongoing discussion, negotiation, and compromise. It illustrates that even differences that aren't strict incompatibilities still demand conscious effort and communication to navigate successfully within a partnership.
Okay, so lifestyle is one major pillar of compatibility. The other involves deeper aspects of identity, personal worldviews, beliefs, values, attitudes, and behavior.
Right. These are described as the core components that truly form your identity and, importantly, funnel directly into your outward behavior.
How so?
The sources explain that compatible partners tend to exhibit similar behaviors precisely because these underlying deeper components are in fundamental alignment. Behavior, in this view, is seen as the observable manifestation of everything else.
Okay, let's start with worldview. How do the sources define that?
Worldview is framed as your fundamental philosophy or conception of the world, your overarching outlook on life and existence. The source provides a compelling example. Two partners who share a deep-seated philosophy that their time on the planet is meant for healing, personal growth, and contributing positively to humanity.
Okay, like a shared life purpose.
Kind of, yeah. Because they share this core outlook, it feels natural and supportive for them to pursue activities that reflect this, even if the activities themselves differ. One might go on a challenging 10-day silent meditation retreat, for example.
While the other volunteers weekly at a local school or something.
Exactly. Their shared why makes their individual what understandable and mutually reinforcing. They get each other on that deeper level.
Beliefs, like faith or religion, seem like an obvious area where alignment is important, especially if kids are part of the picture.
Absolutely. The sources strongly emphasize that alignment on fundamental beliefs, such as faith or religion, becomes particularly crucial when you're contemplating building a future together, especially if that future includes raising children.
Right.
Ideally, you want to be on the same page, or at least deeply respectful and understanding about the core values and spiritual framework you want to instill in a family. The example given is the potential for significant conflict between someone wanting to raise children strictly within the Greek Orthodox Church and their partner being deeply involved in, say, the New Age movement.
Yeah, those aren't just abstract ideas. They dictate rituals, community, fundamental moral instruction, big stuff.
Very big stuff.
Values what's truly important to you, career, money, family. How does that fit in?
Similar values are deemed absolutely essential for a compatible partnership. This means agreeing on what holds the highest priority in your lives. For instance, both partners might share the value that family is the most important thing, consistently prioritized above career advancement or personal wealth accumulation, or having similar outlooks on money, how to earn it, how to spend it, saving versus spending habits. When your fundamental priorities diverge significantly, conflicts are not just likely, they are embedded at the deepest level of the relationship.
And attitudes, how you treat people, how you approach challenges.
Attitudes are seen as how you approach situations and, critically, how you treat others. The first date example provided in the source is a classic illustration, observing how your date treats a server, an Uber driver, or anyone in a service role.
The waitress test.
Pretty much. Disrespect, entitlement, or rudeness towards others is presented as a clear red flag, a sign of fundamentally incompatible attitudes that will inevitably surface in the relationship itself eventually.
So all these layers, worldview, beliefs, values, attitudes, they all kind of express themselves through how a person acts.
Exactly. Behavior is the visible sum total of these deeper internal components. The sources argue that when partners are truly compatible, their behaviors will naturally tend to be similar because they are rooted in that shared foundation of aligned worldviews, beliefs, values, and attitudes.
This isn't a superficial checklist then. It requires looking way beneath the surface.
It absolutely does. And the key takeaway for dating is that understanding these layers helps you be more discerning from the start. It allows you to consciously decide which of these factors are potentially flexible areas for compromise and which are truly absolute deal breakers for you.
So having that clarity guides your decisions about who to invest time and energy in beyond that initial spark, helping you build something sustainable.
That's the idea. It helps you avoid those ticking time bombs we talk about.
Okay, so we spent a lot of time discussing what to look for in a potential partner assessing compatibility. But the sources also make a powerful pivot inward, suggesting that finding love isn't just about the other person. It often starts with some serious personal preparation.
This is a major theme, yeah, particularly highlighted in the Reddit source. It introduces the concept of the preparation.
The preparation sounds intense.
Well, it frames it not as something you do for dating, but as making yourself the best version of you, which is presented as something valuable you should be doing anyway, regardless of your relationship status.
And this preparation isn't just about, like, hitting the gym or getting a promotion.
Far from it. It starts profoundly internally.
Mm-hmm.
The sources delve into the inner work, This encompasses the spiritual and emotional aspects.
Okay.
It's about reaching a place where you truly accept that you are capable of giving love deeply and, just as importantly, that you are deserving of receiving love.
Deserving of love. That's a big one for a lot of people.
It is. The sources point out that a fundamental lack of this self-acceptance can unconsciously lead to self-sabotage in relationships. You might find yourself pushing good people away or gravitating towards unhealthy dynamics because, on some level, you don't feel worthy of something better.
And this feeling of deservingness, it's not tied to achieving certain things or being perfect, like I'll deserve love when I...
No, the sources are very clear here. It's not about needing grand, sweeping, romantic gestures from others to validate you. It's tied to cultivating genuine empathy and forming connections based on authentic caring, the kind you find in deep friendships, for example.
Right. Though romantic relationships obviously need that physical attraction component too.
Of course, yes. But the core feeling of worth is also linked to behaving morally, treating others with respect and kindness, embodying the golden rule. The force suggests that acting in alignment with your values, like treating others as you'd wish to be treated, builds a solid internal sense of self-confidence and worth that isn't easily shaken or scathed by romantic rejection.
So living ethically actually builds inner strength that helps in dating.
It contributes significantly to that foundation of self-respect and resilience. It makes you less susceptible to taking rejection as proof of your own inherent inadequacy. It makes you more robust.
What about the mental aspect of this inner preparation? Mental health seems critical here.
Absolutely critical. The sources emphatically stress the need to recognize and proactively address mental health challenges like anxiety and depression. They explicitly recommend seeking professional help, whether it's therapy or medication, as soon as possible.
Because these things can hold you back.
They can be major barriers to forming healthy connections and often don't resolve on their own. You need to address them.
And the sources strongly warn against neediness and dependency. I think we've all seen that.
Definitely. This is presented as a crucial mental shift. The sources explain that developing neediness, becoming obsessive, or forming unhealthy dependency on others is profoundly unattractive in a partner.
Yeah, it puts a lot of pressure on the other person.
Exactly. They make the point that others should complement your life and be a source of happiness and support, but never your only source. If you rely solely on a partner for your sense of worth, happiness, or validation, you give them enormous and unhealthy power. The power to not just build you up, but also to completely devastate you if they leave or disappoint you.
The tiny Buddha source mentioned echoed this point forcefully, didn't it?
It did. Describing neediness is a major turnoff and an unachievable task for a partner because feeling truly worthy and loved is an inside job. It must fundamentally come from within yourself.
That puts a lot of responsibility back on the individual for their own emotional state, which is maybe uncomfortable but necessary.
It is, and it's a recurring theme. Part of this mental preparation is also learning to handle rejection gracefully in all its forms. It's an unavoidable part of putting yourself out there in the dating world.
Totally.
And viewing it as a learning opportunity rather than a personal indictment is vital.
Beyond the inner work, the sources also touch on outer work, like practical skills for engaging with the wid.
Yes, the personal and social aspects. This includes developing and improving your social skills, which the sources frame as learnable skills, not just something you're either born with or not.
Learnable skills, okay? How?
Well, it involves cultivating general knowledge to become a more engaging conversationalist, honing wit and humor. They even suggest practical things like taking improv classes or trying stand-up comedy to build those muscles.
Improv for dating. Interesting.
Builds confidence and quick thinking. They also talk about surrounding yourself with positive people, which seems intuitive.
Yeah.
But also cultivating passions and interest and being visible about them.
How does being visible about your hobbies help?
It makes you a more interesting, dynamic person. Having genuine passions gives you something to talk about beyond just dating woes, and being visible about them, joining clubs, attending events, sharing your interest online or offline, puts you in spaces where you're likely to meet people who share those interests.
Ah, a natural avenue for connection.
Exactly. The advice also encourages making fewer negative presumptions about others you meet and actively seeking out more diverse life experiences to broaden your perspective and conversational range.
And the idea of being unapologetically yourself, that sounds good, but maybe hard.
It ties directly into the authenticity theme we keep seeing. Sources suggest embracing who you are and accepting that, just like you don't click with every single person you meet. Not everyone is going to like you. And that's okay.
Yay.
Being authentically yourself allows you to attract people who are genuinely compatible with a real you, rather than having to maintain a facade, which is exhausting anyway.
So the sources strongly suggest that building a strong, secure, emotionally healthy, and engaging self spiritually, mentally, personally, and socially is a fundamental prerequisite for being ready for a healthy relationship.
hmm And it significantly increases your chances of attracting compatible partners who appreciate you for who you genuinely are. It's presented not just as preparation for dating, but as essential living that makes you a better candidate for a deep connection.
Okay, all right, so you've done some internal and external preparation. Now, how do you actually go about finding love? The sources offer practical advice on where and how to put yourself out there.
Yeah, the how-to. The Reddit source provides a list of various avenues to explore beyond just, swiping on dating apps.
Like what?
These include traditional routes like volunteering or meeting people through your workplace.
Though that can be tricky.
It can. Users share mixed experiences there, noting potential risks and drama alongside success stories. Other suggestions include taking part-time jobs in social settings like bars, or simply adopting a more open demeanor when you're out and about, being willing to smile, make eye contact, and maybe strike up conversations with strangers.
Traveling is listed, which makes sense, new places, new faces, and asking friends for introductions, the classic setup.
That classic method is definitely included. Also mentioned are joining clubs and interest groups based on your hobbies, attending specific dating or singles events, and of course, dating apps with Hinge, specifically called out by some users as having perhaps a more relationship-focused reputation.
What about online communities?
Yes, web forums and online communities based on shared interests are also suggested as ways to connect with like-minded people. The overall principle seems to be increasing your exposure to potential partners in varied environments.
There's a piece of dating advice you hear constantly. You'll find love when you stop searching. The Reddit source pushes back hard against this idea.
It absolutely does. It argues that this passive approach is fundamentally flawed. It directly challenges the notion that you should wait for the perfect time or emerge from some long cocoon of self-improvement before putting yourself out there.
So it's not about waiting until you're fixed, it's about taking action while you're still working on yourself.
Precisely. The core argument is that you should be open to meeting people, well, basically 24/7. Actively getting out there and engaging with potential partners is necessary when there's no good reason not to.
You can keep improving while dating.
The sources suggest you can and should continue improving yourself while dating, and even within a relationship. In fact, a supportive partner might even help provide accountability for that growth. Life itself is framed as a continuous process of failure, reflection, and self-improvement, and dating is simply part of that ongoing journey.
The quote, "Don't wait, the time will never be just right," is interpreted not just as encouragement, but as a directive that the time is always right to be open to connection.
Yes, it's a call to proactive engagement rather than passive waiting for lightning to strike. And this ties directly into the mindset the sources recommend for approaching others and navigating the courtship process.
Tell us about that mindset. What should it be?
The sources suggest approaching dating from a place of inner security, knowing your worth after doing that inner work we discussed. The idea is that when you approach someone, you aren't bothering them or imposing. You are, in fact, giving them an opportunity to meet someone potentially great.
Like you're doing them a favor.
Well, the Reddit source uses a somewhat provocative analogy, with caveats, of approaching someone like you're handing them a $10,000 check.
Okay, maybe a bit much.
Perhaps a bit arrogant, yeah, but it underscores the point of approaching from abundance and self-worth, rather than scarcity or desperation.
And this links back to avoiding facades, being authentic.
Crucially so. The sources emphasize that authenticity is absolutely vital, especially if you're hoping for a long-term connection. If you present a false version of yourself, a facade, and the other person likes it, you lose confidence because you weren't accepted for who you truly are.
Right, and if they don't like the facade?
Well, if they don't respond positively to the facade, you might have missed a genuine connection with someone who would have liked the real you. So, being transparent about your feelings and clearing your communication is key.
That Dr. Seuss quote comes up again.
It does, and it's powerful. Be who you are and say what you feel, because those who matter don't mind, and those who mind don't matter.
That's incredibly liberating advice, honestly, extending far beyond just dating.
It really is. And part of embracing that mindset is learning to interpret negative feedback, like rejection, constructively. It's not proof of your worthlessness. It's simply a mismatch or perhaps an opportunity to reflect on how you're presenting yourself, but always a chance for reflection, not devastation.
Looking at the Reddit comments, though, it's clear people have very different ideas about how much finding love is skill versus just pure luck.
You see that debate clearly.
Hmm.
Some commenters genuinely feel it's heavily weighted towards luck, like throwing darts randomly you can put in effort, aim, but ultimately, whether you hit a bullseye or miss completely feels outside your control.
While others say,
Others strongly argue that dating is a skill, one that requires practice, effort, and learning, regardless of what anyone tells you. There's also the observation that sometimes people who aren't intensely fixated on finding a relationship seem to attract more attention.
right, the nonchalance works better idea. Maybe because desperation is unattractive?
Possibly. That's one theory.
Great.
And then there's the debate about who should initiate contact.
The gender roles thing.
That's a recurring point in the comments. Some users question the traditional dynamic, where men are expected to do all the approaching, arguing that societal norms are changing, and women should feel empowered to initiate more. The power dynamic inherent in being the initiator is also discussed.
And beyond personal stuff.
Beyond these personal factors and debated strategies, the sources also acknowledge that demographic and geographic realities like living in a small town with limited options, a significant sex ratio imbalance, or cultural norms that restrict social mixing can undeniably make the search significantly harder for some people, limiting the pool of potential partners regardless of personal effort.
So, the sources present finding love as a complex mix. It involves proactive effort, cultivating a mindset based on authenticity and self-worth, navigating various social avenues, continuously improving yourself.
And acknowledging that external factors and, yeah, probably a degree of luck also play a role. It's not just waiting or faking it. It's about conscious engagement, genuine self-expression, and resilience in the face of uncertainty and rejection.
Okay. We've covered compatibility and the importance of personal preparation. Now let's dig into some deeper psychological factors that the sources highlight as profoundly influencing our ability to form and sustain healthy relationships.
This is really fascinating stuff. One of the most significant areas discussed is attachment styles.
Attachment styles, heard of those?
The sources introduce us to attachment theory, a groundbreaking concept developed by psychologists like John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth. The core idea here is that the emotional connection you form with your primary caregiver during your earliest years, infancy specifically, creates a blueprint or working model for how you relate to others and experience intimacy throughout your entire life.
Wow. So those very first relationships really set the stage for all future ones. Like they hardwire something.
They lay a crucial foundation. When a primary caregiver is consistently responsive, supportive, and attuned to the infant's needs, it fosters a secure attachment. The infant learns, okay, I can rely on others, my needs matter, I'm worthy of care.
And if that doesn't happen?
Conversely, confusing, inconsistent, frightening, or neglectful experiences during that critical period can lead to the development of insecure attachment styles, making relationships more challenging later in life. While adult experiences can certainly influence and even change these patterns, that early blueprint is powerful.
What does that secure attachment blueprint look like when someone is an adult navigating romantic relationships?
Adults with a secure attachment style, based on the source descriptions, tend to exhibit a cluster of healthy traits. They are generally self-confident, capable of trusting others, and being trustworthy themselves. They approach relationships with a sense of hope and optimism.
They can handle conflict.
Yeah, they're able to manage conflict constructively, not avoiding it, but working through it. They're comfortable with intimacy, both giving and receiving, affection and closeness. They possess the ability to self-soothe when they are upset or stressed, without solely relying on their partner.
That's important.
Very. They take responsibility for their own actions and feelings. Crucially, they can express their feelings and needs clearly and directly to their partner, and are comfortable seeking and providing support. This allows them to maintain emotional balance and be resilient when facing the inevitable challenges relationships present.
And they feel okay being themselves.
Exactly. The sources emphasize that securely attached individuals appreciate their own self-worth and feel safe and comfortable being their true, authentic selves within a relationship.
That sounds like the ideal, really, the kind of partner most people hope to find or become. What about the insecure styles? How do those early patterns manifest negatively in adult relationships?
The insecure styles present different sets of challenges. The first is the anxious preoccupied, sometimes also called ambivalent.
Anxious preoccupied, what does that mean?
This style often develops from inconsistent caregiving. Sometimes the caregiver was available and responsive, sometimes they weren't, leaving the child feeling uncertain and anxious. In adulthood, this manifests as a deep craving for intimacy and closeness, but simultaneously feeling intense anxiety about abandonment or their partner's feelings towards them.
So they might seem clingy.
They might be perceived as clingy
Yeah.
or needy, yeah. Constantly seeking reassurance, excessively worrying about the relationship's stability, or overreacting to perceived threats of separation. Their internal anxiety often, paradoxically, pushes away the closeness they desperately desire.
And the opposite of that, someone who pulls away from closeness, is that a style too?
That's the avoidant dismissive style. This can stem from consistently unavailable or rejecting caregiving. As adults, they become wary of emotional closeness and tend to overvalue their independence and self-sufficiency to the point where intimacy feels stifling or threatening.
So they push people away.
They might withdraw emotionally or physically when a partner tries to get closer or expresses neediness. They often struggle to express their own emotions and might be seen by partners as distant, closed off, or emotionally unavailable. They may minimize their partner's feelings or needs, keep secrets, or even end relationships abruptly when things get too intimate, just to regain their sense of freedom and control.
Do they actually want connection, though?
Well, the sources suggest that while they might intellectually desire connection, their deep-seated fear leads them to prefer casual relationships or seek out partners who are equally distant, even though deep down they still have that underlying human desire for connection despite their fears.
And finally, the most complex and often most challenging one, linked to trauma. What's that called?
Yes, the disorganized, or sometimes called fearful avoidant style. This style is most strongly associated with childhood trauma, neglect, or abuse, where the caregiver was a source of both comfort and fear. A very confusing experience for a child.
And as adults.
Adults with this style find intimate relationships incredibly confusing and often experience extreme swings in their feelings and behavior, sometimes deeply loving their partner, sometimes intensely fearing or disliking them. They struggle significantly with self-soothing and regulating their emotions.
That sounds really difficult.
It is. They may exhibit unpredictable or erratic behavior, sometimes being insensitive, controlling, or deeply untrusting. Sadly, they may even replicate abusive patterns they experienced. They often feel inherently unworthy of love and are profoundly terrified of getting hurt again, leading to a push and pull dynamic in relationships where they crave connection but are terrified to allow it.
Understanding these styles could be incredibly eye-opening for someone who keeps repeating the same relationship patterns or doesn't understand their own or maybe a partner's behavior.
It can be absolutely transformative. Knowing your own predominant style and understanding a partner's typical patterns can unlock explanations for why certain conflicts keep happening, why you struggle with intimacy, or why you're attracted to certain types of people who might not be good for you. It provides a framework for understanding the often unconscious dynamics at play.
But the sources offer hope here. These attachment styles aren't necessarily a life sentence, are they? Can they change?
That's a vital point of hope the sources provide. Attachment styles can and often do change over time. It's not fixed forever. Therapy, both individual counseling to process past experiences and develop healthier coping mechanisms, and couples therapy to understand how your styles interact, is presented as an invaluable tool for developing a more secure way of relating.
And other relationships can help too.
Yes, forming healthy, supportive relationships and friendships with securely attached individuals can provide corrective experiences and model more secure patterns of thinking and behaving. The sources particularly stress that for those with disorganized attachment, resolving the underlying childhood trauma is often essential for building the capacity for trust and healthy connection.
Okay, that's helpful. Another significant psychological barrier the sources explore is the fear of commitment. That seems pretty common.
It really is. This is presented as a major obstacle for many people seeking or trying to maintain long-term relationships. The sources define commitment quite simply as being dedicated to something or someone, essentially, making a conscious choice to invest and stick with it.
And they argue against the common perception that commitment is limiting, right? Like it traps you.
Yes, they make a strong case that resisting commitment isn't freedom. It's choosing nothing deeply. The article argues that if you spend your life avoiding significant commitments to people, to work, to values, you might dabble in many things, but you won't ever experience anything in a truly profound, meaningful, or transformative way.
So commitment actually enables deeper experience.
Commitment, paradoxically, is presented as the only way to attain the deeper experiences and relationships we truly desire in life. It's framed as the freedom to choose something fully, rather than constantly hedging your bets.
What are some telltale signs that someone might be struggling with a fear of commitment? How would you spot it?
The sources provide a list of common indicators. These include consistently avoiding making concrete plans in relationships or life in general, struggling to give a definitive yes or no answer to important questions.
Maybe person.
Right. Dating someone for years without any discussion of marriage or a long-term future, frequent job hopping, having a pervasive fear of missing out, FOMO, on other potential partners or life paths.
FOMO is huge these days.
It is. Also, intentionally dating partners who are clearly unsuitable for a serious relationship, maybe subconsciously ensuring it won't last, avoiding dating altogether, or being overly skeptical and cynical about other people's successful long-term relationships.
Those sound like ways someone might unconsciously sabotage or prevent closeness. What are the deeper psychological roots of this fear, according to the sources? Why does it happen?
The sources delve into several potential underlying causes. One is a powerful fear of failure, witnessing marriages end badly. Perhaps experiencing your own parents' divorce or difficult past relationships can create a deep skepticism towards long-term partnership. You might unconsciously believe that committing is setting yourself up for inevitable pain and failure, leading you to avoid the risk altogether.
So past negative examples shape future expectations and fears. What about the fear of making the wrong choice? That seems related.
It is. This is described as crippling indecision, a pervasive anxiety about selecting the wrong person from all the available options. This fear is amplified by seeing others suffer the significant fallout of bad relationship choices.
So you get paralyzed.
It can manifest as a relentless, often delusional search for a perfect partner or a perfect relationship, when the reality, as the source points out, is that most significant life choices, including choosing a partner, are decisions between two goods, meaning there are inherent pros and cons, trade-offs, and ramifications no matter which path you choose. The fear prevents choosing at all.
And the final cause connects back to our earlier discussion about intimacy. How does that work?
Yes, there's a significant link between the fear of commitment and a deeper fear of intimacy or rejection. The sources suggest commitment fear often stems from a fear of being truly known.
Being seen, flaws and all.
Exactly. This is the terrifying idea that if you let someone see the real, vulnerable you, your flaws, your insecurities, your full history, they will ultimately find you bad or lacking and reject you. This fear motivates people to keep emotional distance, to withdraw when the relationship starts getting deeper or more vulnerable, preventing the level of deep knowing and acceptance that is fundamental to true, lasting love.
And that often goes back to earlier experiences.
Very frequently rooted in painful experiences in past significant relationships, often from formative years.
So understanding these root causes is the first step. But how do the sources suggest someone can actively work to conquer this fear of commitment? What can you actually do?
They offer several proactive strategies. First, cultivating an openness to difficulty. Recognizing that things that are truly good, noble, and life-giving, like deep relationships, are often not easy or comfortable.
So accepting that struggle is part of it.
Exactly. The more you can accept and lean into challenge in general, the better prepared you are when opportunities for significant commitment arise. Second, practice commitment in small ways.
Like how?
Start by making and keeping small commitments in your daily life. Consistently going to the gym, dedicating time to a hobby, showing up for a friend, saying a firm yes or no to minor things. This builds the psychological muscle required for bigger commitments.
Prioritization also seems key, like saying no to some things.
Absolutely. Learning to intentionally prioritize involves practicing saying a clear no to some things. You can't do everything or be everything to everyone. Deciding what truly matters and dedicating your time and energy there means saying no to distractions or less important options. This skill of conscious prioritization is directly transferable to choosing a partner and a relationship path.
And finally, getting to the root why. Exploring the reasons behind the fear.
Crucially, the sources advocate for deeply exploring the underlying reasons for your specific fear of commitment. For many, especially those with complex roots like trauma or deep-seated fears of being known, therapy is strongly suggested as a worthwhile investment of time, energy, and money.
Therapy for commitment issues.
Yes, gaining self-awareness, processing past wounds, and developing healthier coping mechanisms through therapy can lead to a profound sense of internal freedom and authenticity, making commitment feel less like a terrifying trap and more like a powerful, positive choice that allows for a richer, more fulfilling life.
So attachment styles and the fear of commitment are significant internal landscapes that shape our ability to connect. But even with self-awareness and personal growth, finding and keeping love is clearly still a major challenge for many people.
Oh, it's undeniably difficult, and the sources are very realistic about that. It's not a simple linear path, and there are many factors that contribute to the struggle.
We touched on the debate about luck versus skill earlier, acknowledging both seem to play a part.
Yes, some people might genuinely face limited opportunities due to external circumstances or simply encounter a long string of bad luck, as the Reddit commenters pointed out. But the sources also consistently identify a range of personal traits, behaviors, and circumstances that can significantly impede the search for a partner.
What are some of those characteristics that make it harder, according to the studies and discussions?
Drawing from the Psychology Today study and the Reddit discussions, several consistently appear. These include high levels of neuroticism, sort of emotional instability being excessively high choosiness, very picky, noted particularly for women in this study. High levels of disagreeableness, also noted for women. Shyness, low self-esteem, low perceived mate value, feeling you don't have much to offer, noted particularly for men.
What else?
Being rigidly set in one's ways and unwilling to compromise, social awkwardness or poor social skills, neediness or desperation, having unrealistic standards for a partner or relationship, immaturity, having a tendency to be emotionally distant or unfaithful,
Wow.
an inability to admit fault or apologize, holding extreme or rigid beliefs, whether rigid religion or conspiracy theories, deep-seated fear of intimacy, intense jealousy, or simply not being a nurturing or supportive person. That's
Right.
quite a list.
It really is. And external factors add another layer of difficulty on top of all that.
They do. Things like geographic location can be a significant barrier. A small town with a limited dating pool, a region with a heavily skewed sex ratio, or a culture with strong social segregation can dramatically limit opportunities, regardless of your personal readiness.
And personal circumstances.
Having niche lifestyle choices or standards that very few others share can narrow the pool considerably. And while the Psychology Today study found it less impactful for men, having children from previous relationships can sometimes add complexity or limit the pool of potential partners, though it wasn't a strong predictor of involuntary singlehood for men in that specific study.
The Psychology Today study highlighted one factor that seemed particularly strong as a predictor of struggling to find a relationship. Poor flirting ability. That stood out.
It was a really notable finding. The study indicated that difficulty with flirting was a powerful predictor of being involuntarily single for both men and women.
Wolf. Yeah.
While it's a correlational study, meaning they can't definitively say poor flirting causes singlehood, the association was extremely strong. The article reported that even a 1-unit increase in flirting capacity, based on their measure, was associated with a more than 3 times greater probability of being in an intimate relationship compared to being involuntarily single.
3 times greater probability just from better flirting. That statistic really underscores how important the ability to signal interest, engage in playful banter, and connect on that later initial level seems to be.
It suggests as a fundamental skill in the initial stages of courtship, maybe more than we realize. And finally, just revisiting our psychological discussion, unresolved childhood trauma or ongoing untreated mental health issues like severe depression or anxiety are consistently cited across the sources and in personal anecdotes as significant barriers to forming and maintaining healthy relationships. These internal struggles often manifest in behaviors that make connection difficult.
Given all these potential challenges, personal traits, external factors, psychological patterns, it's perhaps less surprising that for some people, the path to finding a lasting partnership involves trying multiple times, perhaps even marrying more than once. The Reddit thread asking people about their experiences with multiple marriages offered incredibly varied and personal insights into why this happens.
It was a powerful look into the human experience of seeking partnership across a lifetime, wasn't it? The reasons shared by people who have married more than twice cover a wide spectrum.
Like what kind of reasons?
Some attributed their early divorces to sheer youth and inexperience, making poor choices before they really knew themselves or what they wanted in a partner. Others married young to escape difficult or abusive home situations.
Just getting out.
Exactly. Some realized later they had made poor initial choices, marrying someone fundamentally incompatible, like a partner who was lazy or lacked ambition when that was important to them.
Some were motivated by external factors, right? Seeking legal or social benefits of marriage, or simply wanting to have or regain the experience of a family unit.
Yes, the desire for family and companionship is a strong driver. Many expressed a persistent belief in the institution of marriage itself, coupled with a hope that they had learned from past mistakes and the next attempt would be successful.
But not all reasons were so. Straightforward.
No. Some of the reasons shared were more rooted in internal struggles, an inability to tolerate being alone, or maybe to support oneself financially, low self-esteem leading to a pattern of making poor choices or being drawn to dramatic relationships, or simply falling in love with the excitement of new romance and moving on once the initial spark faded. The honeymoon chaser.
The individual stories shared in that thread really brought these reasons to life, though. They were quite something.
They really did. You heard from the woman who, after two unsuccessful marriages, finally found happiness in her third because she realized what she truly needed and was willing to fight for it. Then there was the deeply troubling account of the mother who married 7 times,
7 times.
with the commenter suggesting it was driven by external desires, manipulative tendencies, and potentially severe undiagnosed mental illness, tragically involving her children in the instability.
That's heartbreaking.
Then the woman married twice, who learned that successful marriage wasn't just about compatibility, but about actively choosing to fight for the relationship through difficulty. The sister married 5 times, whose pattern seemed rooted in a profound fear of being alone and maybe a subconscious attraction to relational drama. The man married 3 times, consciously trying to apply lessons learned from the failures of the first 2.
And the woman married 4 times, navigating a history including abuse, a lack of affection, being widowed, and a partner's addiction.
Right. Each marriage presenting a different set of challenges and circumstances.
These stories really underscore that there's no single narrative or simple explanation for multiple marriages. It's a confluence of personal history, learning, or maybe failing to learn, from mistakes, evolving needs, and external circumstances.
Exactly. And it highlights the perseverance involved for many. While some users commented that after multiple painful experiences, they would swear off marriage or serious relationships entirely due to the drama and difficulty.
Which is understandable.
Totally understandable. But many others kept trying. Their motivation often stemmed from the simple fact that loneliness felt worse, or they still held on to the fundamental human desire for companionship, partnership, and family within a committed relationship.
And this brings us back to a crucial point raised in the sources. The idea that keeping love is often presented as being even harder than finding it in the first place.
That was a key insight from the discussion threads. Finding someone compatible with chemistry is challenging enough, right? But sustaining a connection over years requires entirely different skills and effort.
What kind of effort?
It involves ongoing work from both partners, a willingness to navigate inevitable problems and disagreements, the capacity for forgiveness, providing mutual support and coaching each other through life's challenges, and actively choosing to fight for the relationship when things get tough, rather than giving up easily or just settling for passive unhappiness.
So, pulling all this together, this deep dive shows that the path to finding and keeping love is rarely simple or predetermined. It's a complex interplay of internal readiness, doing your own self-work, and understanding your psychological patterns like attachment and commitment fears, external effort in putting yourself out there and navigating different avenues, the crucial assessment and cultivation of compatibility across multiple layers of life, and ultimately, the persistence required to work through challenges alongside another imperfect human being.
It's a profoundly human and often messy journey, isn't it?
Yeah.
Filled with opportunities for growth, pain, and deep connection.
We've taken this deep dive through the vital difference between the spark of chemistry and the foundation of compatibility, explored the non-negotiable work of preparing yourself internally and externally, looked at the practicalities and mindsets involved in actually finding people,
Delved into the deep psychological influences of attachment styles and commitment fears.
and wrestled with why this journey is so challenging for many, including hearing varied, raw experiences from those who have navigated multiple long-term partnerships.
And the sources consistently show there's no magic bullet or one-size-fits-all answer. Success seems to lie in a combination of self-awareness, intentional effort, learning skills like communication and maybe even flirting, and understanding these complex personal and interpersonal dynamics.
Thinking about everything we've covered, the necessity of deep self-knowledge and the continuous process of personal growth required not just to find, but to be a good partner, the challenge of working through difficulty alongside another imperfect human, and the varied, persistent reasons people keep trying despite setbacks and heartbreaks.
It leads to a final thought, doesn't it? About the very nature of the search for love itself.
Yes. If finding and keeping love requires all of this ongoing process of becoming a better self and learning to relate more fully, not just to others, but to yourself, does the real search for love ever truly end once you've found the one? Or is it, in fact, an ongoing journey of continuous growth, learning, and relating, a journey you're always on, whether you are single, partnered, or somewhere in between?
That's a powerful question to reflect upon. What stands out to you from this deep dive?